Hi everybody, Mia here. So yesterday we had a really great cello yoga live stream workshop, and we recorded the workshop for anybody who missed it. Unfortunately, the first part of the workshop got cut off, so this morning I'm making a video that includes the first topic of the workshop so that anybody who's watching the replay won't miss the really great information that we shared yesterday. So we started yesterday's workshop with some introductions. So let me introduce myself. My name is Mia, the creative cellist. And I went to school at the University of Toronto for classical performance, where I studied with Shauna Rolston, who's an internationally acclaimed soloist, and Winona Zelenko also has a solo career, as well as being the principal cellist of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra for many years. After I graduated from the University of Toronto, I applied for teacher training at the Suzuki Association of the Americas, where I studied teacher training with Catherine Walker and Susan Gagnon. Despite those classical credentials, I'm not really your typical classical player. I have a really strong background in improvisation and songwriting, and I spent a lot of my time at music school jamming and making music with jazz musicians. So my methods are strongly rooted in creativity and making sure that when you're learning, your creativity informs your playing and the way that you're teaching yourself. So when I was in my first year of university, I suffered an injury in my left hand that made me rethink the way that I play, and it started this journey to learn how to release tension in my playing, and that kind of brought me to a lot of different places. It brought me to mindfulness techniques that you might find in yoga and meditation classes. It brought me to learning about sports psychology and rehabilitation. And it brought me to learning just generally ways that you can improve your playing by thinking about your body and being more mindful. So this injury really started a journey and kind of sparked an obsession really in me to research the best ways to release tension in your playing as a cello player. I strongly believe that a comfortable and creative cello player is a better cello player. And I've worked hard to make sure that all of my students, both in person and online, are comfortable through activities that encourage focus, flexibility, and freedom. So this framework of focus, flexibility, and freedom is the framework that we're going to be using for the workshop. So I've written out those three concepts right here on this big board, and I just want to go over them and explain exactly how we're going to use them in the workshop. So for each topic that we're going to be discussing and working on, our first thing that we're going to look at is focus. And what focus really is as a cello player when you're working on focus is setting a specific goal or intention for your practice. And this needs to be as specific as possible for you to have the best chance of success. Once you have your focus, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later with the focus that we'll have in our workshop, we have to find flexibility, and that means experiments and tools that we're going to use to achieve our goal or our focus. And for me, these experiments and tools are not set in stone. You might find that one thing works for you and another thing doesn't. So when we're doing this workshop, if you find that something really isn't resonating with you, you don't have to do that thing. You can try something else. And I'm going to give you a few options for each focus that we're going to work on. And then the freedom aspect, that's something that's really big for me in all of my teaching, is the idea of making all of the tools and experiments that you're using, making them your own in a creative way. And that's to encourage you to absorb your learning and really make what you're learning your own and to have as much fun as possible. Because I believe when you have as much fun as possible, you're going to be more motivated to find more tools and experiments to help you achieve your focus. So that's how everything's going to be laid out today. We're going to have a focus, flexibility exercises or experiments, and then some suggestions of things you can do to increase your freedom in each section. So the very first section, which we missed out on with the other recording, was how to get your left hand to cooperate even if you have small hands, oddly shaped fingers, arthritis, or other limitations in your hands. And many of my students come to me with tension issues in their hands. And a lot of the time this is due to being a modern cello player. And modern cello players often spend a lot of time on keyboards. And when you're typing, many of you probably have careers where you have to type a lot. The typing hand, unfortunately, sort of promotes a shape in your hand that is not really what you need to play the cello. So we need to spend some time thinking about our hands and how we can adjust our hands so that they'll be more attuned to cello playing. So before we do this, I want to start with some warm-ups that are going to help our hands and our wrists and our arms to feel more flexible before we jump right into the topic. So the first thing we're going to do in our warm-ups is we're going to shake our hands. And I want you to shake them really rigorously, making sure that your wrists and your fingers are really, really loose, like this. Good. And then we're going to hold our hands out in front of us, kind of like a zombie. I call these zombie hands. And zombie hands are great for cello playing. If you can keep the feeling of zombie hands while you're playing, you're going to be really, really relaxed, and you're going to have a really much better time playing your cello than if you tense up your hands. So think about your hands as zombie hands. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do to warm up our hands is what I call wrist bends. So you're going to put your wrists, both wrists, on a chair, and you can just gently pulse on the chair like this, back and forth. Once you feel like you've got some flexibility there, you can push down your wrist and hold. Now, if this feels uncomfortable in any way, you're just going to pull back and pulse. But if it feels good and it feels comfortable, you can push it down into the chair and just wait a few seconds, just like this. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to pulse. You might find that one wrist is more tense than the other, so you can spend a little bit more time with that one. And then just push down and wait. And you can spend as much time as you like here to get your hands feeling really stretched out. If you do a lot of work on a keyboard, this is a really great exercise for just stretching out those fingers that get sore when you're typing. Okay, so the next exercise I like to do to warm up my hands and wrists is what I call finger pulls. So one at a time, you're going to gently pull each finger and give it a little massage, starting with the pinky. I'm just going to pull them all. And again, you can spend as much time as you like on this. Right now, we're going to kind of go quickly because we have a lot of information to get through. I'm going to pull each finger, really just feeling out the knuckles. Notice if you've got any areas of tension, you can spend a little bit of extra time there rubbing it out. Pull each finger individually. This is encouraging you to have finger independence and to be really aware of what's going on with your fingers. And then the thumb. You're going to spend extra time at the base of your thumb in particular, because in cello playing, especially the left thumb can get really tight. So you can just try massaging the base of your thumb like this. And then we're going to do the other hand. So pinky. And again, you're probably going to find that one hand feels different to the other. That's totally normal. So pulling the fingers and spend a little bit of time at the base of the thumb. On my hand, my left thumb has some tension, which suggests there's a little bit of squeezing going on. The right thumb, not as much tension. And then for an added great feeling in your hands, you can try rubbing or massaging the area between your fingers. So what I call the webbing. So you're just gonna rub in between each finger. This feels really good. Gets your fingers all warmed up. And then the same in the other hand, like this. Okay. Then we're going to do clenching fists and star hands. So in cello playing, we need really flexible and responsive fingers. So we're going to clench our fists really, really tight and then spring them open like stars. And the stars are going to be as wide as you can get them. Then clench, spring open. Clench, spring open. And then as an added challenge, you can try the Vulcan Live Long and Prosper sign. This is really great for when we have to create some space between these fingers that don't want to come apart. You can make some scissors. The next thing is called knuckle taps. And this is something that if anybody here has played piano, you might remember the feeling of tapping your finger on a key on the piano. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to tap either on our hand or on a table. And when you tap your finger, you want to feel a flexibility and bounciness in your knuckles. So we're not going to be tapping with really rigid knuckles. You're going to tap with kind of soft, springy knuckles. We're going to tap all the fingers with springy knuckles. Again, we're waking up the fingers, waking up their awareness, getting you ready to play. And then we can do the same on the other hand. Just springy, bouncy knuckles. Kind of coming down like little hammers. Like this. Okay. Now we're just going to do some arm rolls backwards just to get our necks and our shoulders feeling soft. Just roll back. And then you're going to take your right arm, place it to the side, and stretch over to the left to get a good stretch through your neck here. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. Good. And there's any other kinds of stretching or warm-ups that you want to do before you play. You can stop the video and do that now. These are just some basic ones for getting the fingers and the wrist warmed up, because that's in particular where we're going to be concentrating today. Okay, so now we can pick up our cellos. And we're going to start with a very simple breathing exercise with long tones. So we're going to put our bows on the D string right at the frog. And as we play, as we move across the D string, we're going to inhale for 4 beats. And then when we change bow, we're going to exhale for 4 beats, just like this. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're just coming across the string with absolutely no tension, remembering our zombie wrists and zombie hands. And this time, when we come across, we're going to try moving with the bow like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale and move. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale and move. 2, 3, 4. And you can stop this video and try that same exercise on all 4 strings. For now, we're going to move forward with the topics. But this is a really great way just to get settled in your cello chair and to feel comfortable with your cello. And the idea is just relax your body and breathe deeply before we get into anything strenuous. Okay, so let's get started with our first topic. So our first topic today is how to get your left hand to cooperate even if you have small hands, oddly shaped fingers, arthritis, or other limitations. And a lot of cellists that I work with have many of these things going on. If you happen to be a smaller person, you probably have smaller hands. And this can create quite a bit of challenge for cellists who are trying to get around a large instrument. One of my main pieces of advice for an adult that's starting cello later in life is to consider playing a 7/8 size cello, because you're going to just find that the stretches that are required between the notes are a little bit easier if you're playing on the 7/8. But if you have a full-size cello and you love it, don't worry. There's many ways that we can get around that instrument and still feel comfortable and play with accuracy. Before we get started though on the left hand exercises, I wanted to just show you a really great tool for strengthening your hand. In particular, if you have hands that you feel just aren't quite strong enough, if your fingers feel kind of weak, or if you suffer from arthritis, this little device is called the Grip Saver Plus. And there's many different types of devices like this that are available on Amazon or at your local mountain co-op equipment store. And what these are devices that help you to strengthen your grip. And what I particularly like about this one is that it also has a stress ball or soft ball in the middle. So you put your fingers into the little elastics, you have this ball in the middle, and then you just squeeze. And this really, I find this really, really helpful for gently strengthening your hand. There's lots of different grip strengtheners out there. This is one that I particularly enjoy because of the round ball, round kind of semi-firm ball in the middle that really encourages your hand to keep its round C for cello shape and encourages your thumb to be round as well. So if you can, I really encourage you, if you're having any issues with your left hand at all, to pick up one of these Grip Saver Plus balls and give that a try. So let's start with our focus for this topic. So our focus for this topic is moving our left hand around the fingerboard in a way that promotes more accurate tuning, but also achieving comfort in the hand. And like I was saying, I believe a comfortable cello player is a better cello player. For many of us, there's lots of challenges around staying in tune with the left hand, and often that's because of small hands or hands with kind of limitations. It's hard to move the fingers around. We find the stretches are hard to achieve. So one thing I wanted to talk about is the concept of a set hand position versus a flexible hand position. When cello was first being taught, and there was the great pedagogues of cello teaching, most of these pedagogues were late 19th century men who were giving advice about how to play the cello. And many of these men had very large hands, or regular man hands, but still quite a bit bigger than most women's hands. So if you have small hands, or if you have limitations in your hands, you're not going to be able to play the way that these pedagogues suggested. And most of them, the way that they were suggesting that people play, is that you put your fingers in a position and you hold the fingers down. You place your thumb behind the second finger, and then this is basically the way that you play. You play with your fingers placed down on the string, and your thumb doesn't move from behind the second finger. Unfortunately, for most people, if you give this a try, so why don't you put your hand in first position, and we're going to try plucking B, C, C sharp, and D. And I want you, as an experiment, to try really, really hard to place all of those fingers down exactly on the right spot. Put your thumb behind the second finger and hold that position. Unless you have larger hands or you've been playing cello all your life, this is probably going to feel pretty tense. This is not a position that you can play in for very long without some serious tension creeping into your hand. So luckily for you, in the 20th century, pedagogues started to think about different ways that a cellist could move around the cello fingerboard without that kind of tension in your hand. Now, if you have a larger hand and you have big spaces between your fingers, you may not find the spacing of the half steps in the first position to be that difficult to achieve. But if you're like many of us, these stretches are pretty wide. So what we need to do is develop independent fingers. And this is the way that I was taught by my teacher, Shauna Rolston, who's a very tiny person. And she is able to stretch, like the stretches in her hand are amazing because she's been playing since a kid. But she does have some methods that she uses in order to decrease tension in her hand. And one of them is basically increasing independence in each finger by letting go with the other fingers as she's playing, as well as allowing the thumb to move with the fingers. So there's a basic shape that you need to think of when you're playing in order to develop independent fingers. You want to think about the finger that's playing and the thumb as a unit. And this unit makes a circle like this. So when you're playing, you're going to make a circle with your first finger and thumb, then first finger and second finger, second finger and thumb and third finger, and then finally thumb and fourth finger. Now for most people it's hard to get the thumb right behind the fourth finger, but when you're playing the fourth finger, if you can bring your thumb down close to the fourth finger, this is really going to help you feel like you have a sense of independence in the fingers, and it's going to help your tuning. What this results in when you're playing is essentially a series of tiny shifts along the fingerboard. And these tiny shifts are called microshifts. So many of you have probably heard of that term, microshifting. So what's meant by microshifting is making tiny adjustments every time you put a finger down. And those adjustments are related to what the thumb is doing. So many of you might have been taught to put your thumb in one place and keep it there. And what I'm saying is that you can experiment with moving that thumb to support whatever finger is playing. And this is going to help you to avoid injury in your fingers, and it's also going to make your hand more flexible. So let's give this a little bit of a try. So we're going to play, you're going to start on the A string with the note B. Make sure that your thumb is behind the B and that it's rounded a little bit. So you're making that circle shape between the first finger and the round thumb at the back. When you move to the second finger, you're going to move your thumb at the same time as your finger to make a new circle. Once you have the circle in place, you let go with the first finger. So we've got first finger and thumb, second finger and thumb. So your thumb has moved down the fingerboard. Then we go to the third finger. This might just be a little tiny move. Third finger and thumb, and then finally fourth finger. Now you may not need to bring the thumb down even more for the fourth finger unless it feels like the fourth finger is really tight and straight, in which case you can bring that thumb even further down to support the fourth finger. So this is a series of tiny little shifts, and the way that you know if this is working is if your notes feel in tune, if you can hear them, la, 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 and if you can feel a very relaxed, soft thumb moving down the back of the fingerboard. At slow speeds, when you're playing slow things, this is the very best way to maintain tuning and to play in a very relaxed way. When we get to playing faster things, it's not always possible to be constantly moving the thumb, but you'll find that if you practice slowly with the thumb moving, when you come to those pieces where you have to kind of set the thumb a little bit more and move and pivot around it, it feels much more relaxed and it's much more responsive, and it doesn't grip at the back as much. So that's something to try. I would recommend trying it on all four strings. So your thumb is moving every time you move a finger. You're resetting your thumb. So that's one way that you can develop flexibility. That's an experiment to try in your left hand, is making thumb circles so that you can develop finger independence. The next thing that you can try to develop that finger independence is left hand percussion techniques. So this is kind of related to developing strength in your fingers to reduce the likelihood that you're going to get injured and to help with the shape of the fingers and their overall responsiveness. So one exercise I like to do that really helps is left finger pulls. So you're going to pluck the string, any string, with your first finger. Then you're going to pluck it with two fingers. You'll notice how round and curled your fingers are when you do this. Then all three fingers. Make sure all the fingers are involved. And then four fingers. And you can try this at different speeds, a little faster. Two fingers, three fingers, four fingers. The whole time you want to be thinking about that thumb, making sure the thumb is staying flexible and bent. See how quickly you can do this? And then you can try that on all four strings. We won't do that right now. We can try it on all 4 strings. Right, plucking with your left hand. This is going to develop this kind of nice flexibility in the left hand fingers. And then another thing you can try is tapping the fingers. So you remember these soft knuckle bounces that we were doing at the beginning as warm-ups? We're going to use those soft knuckle bounces to try making left hand notes. So we're playing B, just kind of throwing the finger at the string in a bouncy kind of way. Make sure the knuckles stay soft and the thumb stays soft. Then try 2 fingers. So up, up and down. 3 fingers. And 4 fingers. And remember to adjust the thumb. Right now, tuning isn't as important for this exercise as just getting a really nice throwing action and soft knuckles. And then you can try that on all 4 strings as well. So those are some exercises or experiments that you can try to get more flexibility happening in your left hand as a freedom component. So how do you go about making this kind of action your own? So what I like to do is improvise. I really love improvising and just making up stuff. So what I would recommend is that you try moving around your fingerboard however you're comfortable. You can try it in maybe the 1st to the 4th positions. Try this in a creative way that's fun and comfortable. So what you're going to be trying to do is just move around the fingerboard trying these various techniques. So you might try plucking with 4 fingers, 1st position, plucking with 4 fingers up here. Right, 2nd position. Try all your positions. Different strings. You can try this. Then you can try your hammer-ons. Maybe try 1 finger. Hammer on in different positions. There's no rules here. Just try it in different places, see how it feels. Plucking to make it a little more musical. You could try some hammer-ons with plucks. Try shifting. Try some of the pullbacks with plucks. See what that sounds like. Is that you'll end up using techniques that are really common in guitar playing. Guitarists are really great because the tradition of guitar playing is so improvisatory. So even though there are classical guitarists were kind of late to the classical game. So teaching yourself how to play guitar is a really big part of guitar culture, and a lot of guitarists are very comfortable experimenting with different things that they can do with their left hand to make different kinds of effects. And I think as a cello player, if you can start exploring some of those different techniques with your left hand, this is going to help you develop sort of the fun and creativity that you need to really wake up your left hand and to feel super comfortable just kind of moving around your fingerboard and feeling more free. And that's a really important aspect. You want to feel free. So that's all of the information and ideas that I have to share with you for the first topic. The second topic is mostly covered on the recording that I sent you yesterday, the replay of the workshop. It does miss out the title of the section. So the title of the second section was how to develop a more relaxed vibrato so that you can play with more expression. And we started this section by experimenting with using a Kleenex. So if you've never tried this exercise before, this is a really fun way to get your left arm moving in a super free way that encourages really good vibrato. And it's also a really great way to clean your cello. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a Kleenex, you're going to put it around the fingerboard, then you're going to take your 4 fingers and you're going to place them in between the A and the D string. So the tips of your fingers are going to be in between the A and the D string, nice soft thumb at the back. And then you're just going to scrub gently up and down the cello. And what you're doing here is you're trying to get in touch with the movement in your left arm. and keeping that movement really steady, trying it at different speeds. And you're going to do that experiment between all the strings. So between the D and the G strings, you bring up your elbow slightly. And then between the G and the C strings. You can do this for as long as you need to feel really comfortable. Make sure when you're doing this that there's no tension in your neck. Your arm is just coming up and down. Then once you've done that with the Kleenex, you can try doing it with just fingers. Very, very relaxed scrubbing between each string. Relaxed scrubbing. No tightness in the thumb. Just like this. And then to extend this exercise, you're going to take, let's say, 2 fingers. For most people, second finger is their most comfortable vibrato. Some people, it's 1. Whichever is your most comfortable vibrato finger. I'm going to take 2 fingers, and you're going to just scrub, but a much tinier section. So just a little bit of scrubbing. And then the scrubbing is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, like this. And then you're going to try that on all the strings with your 2 fingers or your 1 finger, whatever is most comfortable for you. On top of the string this time, not in between. Right, little tiny scrubs. Then you can pick up your bow and you can try the scrubs with the bow. It's going to sound really funny. Little tiny scrubs like this. Then D string, little tiny scrubs up and down, and the C string. If you start to feel any kind of rug burn on your fingers, just take a rest. Okay, so once you've got that scrubbing action, you make it smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually your finger is just going to be on one spot. With the vibrato, in order to make an expressive vibrato, is just the loosest vibrato you possibly can. So there might still be a little bit of up and down action on the string. Eventually, you're going to stop on that 1 finger. And the second exercise that we tried for vibrato that's not on your replay is making the widest possible oscillation that you possibly can with your most favorite vibrato finger, and then the fastest and tightest oscillation, and just making an experiment to see the difference between those 2 things. So if I do a really wide oscillation on my first finger, on the A string, you can hear the sound it's making. You'll notice that my elbow is coming forward and back, forward and back. Really extreme and wide. And then the opposite of that is really, really, really fast and tight. Make it as fast and tight as you can. You can even just shake your hand. Super, super fast. And then really, really slow. And super, super fast. So those are the extremes of your vibrato, right? A really wide oscillation and then a really tight and fast vibrato. Any kind of vibrato that you add to pieces that you might be working on or pieces that you write, it's going to fall somewhere between the super wide oscillation or the very, very tight vibrato. And you want to be able to do all of the speeds in between. So my favorite way to do that is to put a beat on in the background. So either a metronome if you like working with a metronome, or some kind of fun beat at a certain speed, and then try oscillating really slow and then just gradually increasing the speed until you have have control of all speeds. And the focus of this exercise is just to do one finger at a time. Don't try to practice your vibrato by playing all 4 fingers. Try one finger at a time, then move to the next finger. And just as a note about the pinky finger, which is something that somebody in the workshop asked a question about with the microshifting and the thumb, when you're doing vibrato on your 4th finger, it's a really good idea to try and support that 4th finger with your thumb as close as it can be to the pinky while still feeling comfortable. And many people find when they're developing 4th finger vibrato, it feels a little bit weak and uncomfortable. If you put your 3rd finger kind of next to the 4th finger, or maybe even a little bit on top, that can help the 4th finger to feel a little bit more strong. It's almost like it has a brace. Now you won't always be able to play like that, but if you have a long 4th finger note, you can support the 4th finger with your thumb. And that's all the topics for today. The rest of the replay is available in your email. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. See you soon.